There's one on the four speakers. I think personally it's that's my thought, but like obviously. He might. I think there'll be questions on this topic first. He would really appreciate it. Yeah, of course.
You better look at the sign. You didn't look at the sign yesterday and screwed everybody.
Wait, is that the same sign?
Where's a brand new sign?
There's a brand new sign.
Okay.
Wee you.
Look at it. Richard Blumenthal, he saved it for everything.
Are you following that? Leave him alone.
All right.
I'm back.
I think I want to get my kids field day tomorrow. Yeah. Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. Would you raise me? No, it's just like
Putting out good you know.
like who knows? Because I'm not going to go through a dash and install, so I'm hoping it's not.
All right, let's stay away.
You can stay as late as they want.
Doesn't clarify. Yes.
Like long shot, if I look out.
One to three, but with the 1 4 on it.
How about that?
I've never shot a forward before. Kind of thought that it was pretty good.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't really help that he doesn't call him his own question. He just like prefers to.
Trying to put it out there. Trying to put out positive.
Let's see what's this.
That's what that 300.
Yeah.
How about that center position?
What?
That's all set. Did the center position work for anything?
Center, that was really back and forth in the center. That one.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that works pretty good.
Of course, okay. But it's the same stupid background.
Yeah, it's hard to shoot.
It's a complex block of the followers.
Yeah, I thought it was hard to shoot. I had a good idea for the walking, but my thoughts I was trying to walk. So I'm shooting it from the ground from the other side, not trying to like frame it up between two things. And he basically came in like a couple feet more I did, and I just couldn't cover it. That's what it said.
In the walk around, it's tough. Always tough.
And if you shoot it dead on, it's fine, but if you try to get clever with it, and it doesn't work out.
Heads up. Yeah.
Did somebody see it?
It's early in the morning, I'm looking down, leaving my iPad.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. And I am very proud to be joined by Senators Wyden, Senator Cantwell, and Senator Kaine. Now, yesterday, Trump announced a deal with South Korea. And it's very similar to the deals we saw in the past with Japan and EU. All talk, no substance, and raising costs for the average American. So let's go ahead and break some of these deals down. Each time it's the same story. Trump gets up, says whatever pops into his head that day, and the next day it comes out that everything he said, or almost everything he said, was exaggerated, wrong, false. In Japan, on July 22nd, Trump said Japan is going to invest $550 billion in new investment in the U.S. You know what Japan said the next day? It's less than 2% of that. Okay? Meanwhile, tariffs went up 15%. They were 2%, now they're 15%. A huge increase in cost for the American people. In EU, on July 27th, Trump claimed $750 billion in new energy purchases and $600 billion in new investment in the U.S. Following the announcement, the EU said those numbers are unachievable, and besides, they didn't have to obey the agreements. They were non-binding. And again, tariffs up 15%. South Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam. I'd say to the media, when he announces his next tariff deal, you better ask a lot of questions, because the next day, it's all going to be undone. In some cases, Trump has claimed commitments from these countries that they didn't make. We still don't know what the agreement with Vietnam includes, neither do they. They've said that. Trump claimed a deal nearly a month ago, but neither side agrees on what he agreed to in Vietnam. So what is this chaos? Our businesses, our small businesses, our medium-sized businesses, our large businesses need some degree of certainty, and all they're getting is chaos and inflation. You saw the numbers yesterday. So the Trump tariff trade war is a trade war on the American people. We've seen this week the chaos and uncertainty. Business investment down 3%, in good part because people don't know what the tariffs will be. No one knows what's coming when Donald Trump has no plan, no strategy, and he's not honest about what he presents. But we do know one thing. Tariffs are up since Trump took office. Look at the price of goods. Leather, 40% higher. Fresh produce, 7% higher. Cars, 12% higher. Computers and electronics, 18% higher. It is estimated the average American family will pay $2,400 more a year because of the Trump tariff tax. Amazing. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. It's often more than raises people get for the whole year. Okay, when Trump came into office, the EU tariff was 2%. Now it's 15%. Don't look at what number Trump shot out there before. The real change is what it was and what it is. And in almost every case, it's gone up significantly. When Trump came into office, the tariff on South Korea was 1%. Now it's 15%. When Trump came into office, the tariff on Japan was 1.5%. Now it's 10 times that. It's going to cost 500,000 jobs. Meanwhile, if there's one country that's benefited from all this chaos, it's China. Over the past few weeks, Trump has granted the Chinese government greater access to our advanced AI chips. A number of us worked to prevent those chips from being sold to China when Biden was president. They're vital to our national security. Trump's hitting the brakes on new restrictions on other sensitive tech exports to Chinese companies. We had restrictions. So, you know, our kids, our grandkids, and even us, we're going to suffer when China starts catching up and getting ahead of us on key industries like AI, where they can dominate many parts of the global economy and even the way of global thinking. So our national security should never be a bargaining chip, least of all when we're dealing with Beijing. The deals he's made lack transparency, accountability, means of enforcement, what trade barriers are being reduced, who's making sure the investments are real, and if there are investments flowing in, how are we ensuring the money's going to benefit the American people, not one of Trump's billionaire friends, which seems to be the MO of this administration. So this is a deal, all right. It's a raw deal for the American people. Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. And folks, because the leader has hit so many of the key issues, I've just got a couple of points that I want to make to supplement his good arguments. First of all, the reason your mortgage rates are high, the reason your grocery prices are high, Donald Trump is pretending to do something productive. That's what this is really all about. And with these agreements, and some of them I can tell you are not much more than a napkin with a few lines squiggled on it, are not opening up markets for our farmers and manufacturers. And on the Finance Committee, we take a special interest in following the money. And this Trump trade recipe is a recipe for corruption. All the details about these so-called agreements are hidden. Nobody knows about them. And in fact, often they get denounced by a so-called signer before they even get in the news media. This is a recipe for corruption. And I can tell you, on the Finance Committee, we're going to put a special focus in the days ahead on how Donald Trump and people around him could be personally profiting from some of these negotiations and some of these agreements. And we'll save that for another day. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Senator Wyden. Senator Cantwell.
Well, thank you, Leader Schumer, for bringing us together on this critical topic. First, the United States Senate should not be hearing about trade or tariff policies and developments by watching cable TV. The administration officials should be telling the Congress exactly what these proposals are. This is serious business with broad economic consequences and affecting all our constituents. The Congress needs to see the fine print on what these deals really mean. The Trump tariffs will increase prices on the American consumers, as we see here. The increased price overall for 2025 tariffs on average are expected to be $2,400 in reduced income for Americans. The Seattle Times had an article this morning that ground beef was selling for $14.49 a pound. The cost of a basic T-shirt has risen from $10 to $25. And Procter & Gamble, the maker of household staples like Tide and Charmin toilet paper, said because of the tariffs, they are hiking prices next month about 25% on their products in order to offset a $1 billion hit they are going to take because of the tariffs. The president is also threatening tariffs on pharmaceuticals. We cannot afford any higher prices on drugs. At a time when American people are already struggling to afford life-saving drugs, the administration is trying to make them more expensive. When the administration talks about how much revenue is coming from these tariffs, the revenue is coming right out of the pockets of Americans. Don't be fooled. The parade of handshakes, press releases is meant to distract from the very real possibility the Federal Court of Appeals will rule that the Trump administration does not, never had, the legal authority to unilaterally raise taxes on imports without coming to Congress first. Let's be clear, what the Trump administration is trying to pull off is the unconstitutional power grab of Congress's revenue-raising authority. Why should we stand back and let the President of the United States raise taxes on Americans with these tariffs? The American people deserve transparency, and they deserve lower prices. They were promised lower prices. Where are they?
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. Senator Kane.
Thank you. Well, thank you to my colleagues and to our leader and to all of you for coming. We're going to be on a recess sometime. And I know one thing. I know one thing about the recess, which is the four of us are all going to be doing something very similar. We're going to be traveling around our states, and we're going to be hearing a ton from our constituents. The last time I traveled around Virginia for a week was in April, and I'm going to be doing the same thing next week. And in April, at the front end of this tariff thing, here's what I was hearing. The tariff regime is increasing our costs. Businesses that bring in aluminum and steel, for example, which is everything from big manufacturers to the pie shop that buys aluminum pie tins from Canada, their costs are going up, and that affects their ability to sell. There's a second effect of the tariffs, which is the retaliation. When Donald Trump puts tariffs on other nations, they're going to put them on us. And in Virginia, that is hitting the ag and forestry sector the hardest. A sector that's already been hit pretty hard by low commodity prices in the last few years, that's being hit pretty hard by some of the deportation policies. So the retaliatory tariffs are like the second punch. And then the third punch is the reputational effect. We've got businesses now, or consumers in Canada, for example, they will not buy American products. They will not travel to the U.S. because they're so mad about the disrespect that is being visited upon them by Trump. So there's a triple level effect of raising the costs of imports, leading to retaliatory effects, and then a reputational effect that's really socking our people. And what you're seeing, and this is a good one, there is like a stair step of costs that are going up. Back to school this year is going to cost a lot more than back to school last year. And then Thanksgiving shopping this year, it's going to cost an awful lot more than last year. Then Christmas holiday shopping even more. The stair-step effect of it is really affecting folks. Chaos is next. The way Donald Trump does this, announce it, pause it, like Mexico. Well, why don't we wait another 60 or 90 days on Mexico? Offer an exception to you, but not to you. Nobody knows what to expect. And as I traveled around Virginia in April, I'm going to hear it again next week, I have a business. I want to invest more. I'm ready to invest, but I can't invest till I know what the rules are going to be. Or maybe I'm a multinational business. I could invest in the United States, or I could invest in Europe, or I could invest somewhere else. But I can't make an investment decision if I don't know what the rules are going to be. There's a lot of capital sitting on the sidelines now that should be invested in the American economy that isn't being invested because of the chaos. And then finally, the last point I'll make is corruption. President Trump announced yesterday something among all the unprecedented, truly unprecedented. It is an emergency that Brazil has chosen to prosecute a friend of mine. And therefore, as a president, I'm declaring under emergency powers a 50% tariff on all goods from Brazil, a nation where the U.S. has a trade surplus, not a trade deficit, because his friend is being prosecuted. That is not an emergency under IEPA. That is an unprecedented use of that power, and we need to take steps, and my colleagues here and I will take steps to challenge the president's use of the emergency powers in this most unusual way. Glad to be together with a team that is battling these chaotic, consequential, and corrupt tariffs that are hurting Americans.
Thank you, Tim. And before we get to questions, Tim mentioned you couldn't believe he would do something he did yesterday. Here's even something more confounding, some breaking news. Just now, the White House announced construction of a $200 million White House ballroom that will begin in September. A $200 million ballroom. Where'd this money come from? Did Congress appropriate it? I don't think so. It's almost like DOGE was never about waste at all. It was about cutting services to help Trump and his billionaire buddies. So it seems that DOGE was all about making cuts on Americans to fund their ballroom? Was that what DOGE was all about? So let's recap Trump's week in terms of its economic effect on American people and in terms of corruption. This week, he opposed stock trading bans for members of Congress and the president, something we support. He's now spending $900 million to refit his corrupt plane from gutter. He announced plans to build himself a new White House ballroom so he can eat his cheeseburgers in there in luxury. And he's imposing a new double tax on American families through his tariffs. As was said, costs, chaos, corruption, all embodied this week as typical on this subject.
I promise I have a question on this subject, but aesthetically, on the White House construction, it will be almost 2 times the size of the main White House building.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? You're a New Yorker.
Listen, I'm happy to eat my cheeseburger at my desk. I don't need a $200 million ballroom to eat it in.
Understood. Okay, entree. Senator King touched on this a bit, but the president makes it sound like trading partners are very eager to come and negotiate and that they're happy when all is said and done, but you all travel internationally, you all talk to ambassadors. Reputationally, what is this doing to the United States?
It's making Trump's tariff negotiations, tariff threats, tariff chaos is making, first, a fool of the United States in the eyes of the nations of the world. And second, the worst thing is because we care about the average American, $2,400 more in costs? Look at that. It's crazy. And since you mentioned Tim, I was just going to bring Tim over.
Yeah, but what was the question? I was still
Okay,
listening to you. I
On
wasn't.
the world stage, what,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
And Ron can.
you were just
Ron is.
about your visit.
Ron Wyden is on the world stage. He knows.
All of us have been interested in this, but I took a bipartisan delegation to Canada, and one of the principal questions just a few days ago was who they were going to make alliances with other than the United States, because it was clear that they didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know whether they heard that a deal was going to be on this particular approach, and then it was kind of taken in a completely different direction. So there's no question that the relationships that we have forged over the years, in some cases for decades, particularly in terms of having these alliances, we've got people we can count on, based on what we saw in Canada, are taking a big toll, and we really have no better friend than Canada. So if they're walking and not interested in some of these deals, that's a message.
And on a strategic, I was just going to say, on a strategic basis, instead of him allying with our allies against China when China does all kinds of trade imbalances with us and doesn't treat us fairly, he's having them join with China against us. How profoundly stupid and unthought out.
Can I give I'm going to give an example. I was in Germany in April to talk to Germany about aid to Ukraine. So I went to Kyiv, Berlin, and Warsaw, and it was all focused on Ukraine. But everywhere I got, before I could talk about my issue, they were like, well, wait, what about tariffs? So here would be the German example. They rewrite their constitution to enable them to put more into defense. They elect a new government that's probably the most pro-U.S. government that they've had in Germany for a very long while. And the government that's elected, the new chancellor, has a mandate, and that's jumpstart the German economy that's been in the doldrums since 2019. So you're meeting with the new government. It's like, we are your friends. We are together with you in Ukraine. We want to put in more. We're pro-U.S. We just got elected with a mandate. You are the biggest obstacle standing in the way of us and the mandate we just got from the German people, because the tariffs are going to hurt this German export economy so badly. So as Chuck said, these are punishing our allies more than our adversaries, and sometimes they're even punishing Americans more than our allies. The president cuts a deal to put a 15% tariff on Japanese products. Toyota stock goes up by 8%. Why? Because even at 15%, it is now cheaper to buy a Japanese vehicle in the United States than one made in America with a lot of content from Canada and Mexico. So we're hurting allies for adversaries, and we're hurting ourselves to the advantage of others. It makes no sense.
We're hurting our own countries. Ford announced a $2 billion loss in good part because of the tariffs. Yes.
My question is related to what you just said, which is you've had two IEPA votes. One passed, one probably would have passed if White House and McConnell had been.
Would have passed.
But at any rate, my question is, given these earnings reports that we're having, and given that the deals have resulted in substantially higher tariffs, do you think that there could be movement among Republicans so that you could get a veto-proof majority, which of course you would need to actually end the IEPA tariffs if the courts do not?
Well, I'll call on Maria for a minute, because she had a bill to put it back in Congress where it was, and I think 7 Republicans joined it.
Yeah.
Maria.
Well, and also if you could touch on Section 338 and 122 in case IEPA is overturned in the courts, is there something Congress should do about these other archaic?
Well, the courts are looking at these issues now, and the lower court, as you can see, basically said there was nothing in what the president was trying to say from emergency perspective, and we don't think he's following the law as it relates to 301 or any of these. When you do tariffs like this, you have to have detailed economic analysis of the damage and the cause, and then make a point, because trade is about world trade rules and order, not about just making something up, whoever's president. I mean, that's what distinguished, even back in England, they were like, no, we're not giving this power to the king, because people realized in the founding of our country that that's a dangerous thing to have a king or a president have this ability, because it is basically a tax. So they wanted to have a legislative body do this. So I think that they have not proven their use of these tariffs in any of the, I know they think, you know, that Secretary Lutnick said he could fall back on 301, but you really have to have a very detailed case on 301. So listen, I represent 2 big companies in the state of Washington, Boeing and Microsoft, who just had great earnings reports. Why did they have great earnings reports? Because they're investing in next generation technology and they're selling into a global market. Okay, the president is proposing a contraction of us doing that. He's not proposing, he's cutting all the science and R&D. He's cutting all the things that said come to the United States and make these things. And as my colleagues just mentioned, he's making all our allies mad. So they're thinking, well, how do I counter the United States? Instead of saying, this is a global market, lots of opportunity. How are we going to reach those markets? How can we get our products into those markets? And so the cost on the American consumer, and I think the president thinks, oh, well, somehow they'll come back. You might force some elements to come back, but at what cost? And the growth that we've had in a global expansion is 95% of consumers live outside the United States. The United States should be attracting the best and brightest, making the best and the best products, and selling that on a global stage, not this contraction.
And do you think you can get more Republicans on board to check these powers?
Well, so yes, I do, because my Republican colleagues have said, let's see the deals. And now, while there's a lot of trumpeting of these deals,
So to speak.
they are handshake deals. You know, the Wall Street Journal called them willy-nilly. I just think they don't represent the scope of what my colleagues, when you think about the first Trump administration and what happened with China, where they didn't follow through anyway, and our farmers were hurt, and then they came to Congress and said, you cough up the money to make our farmers whole, which taxpayers ended up doing, is not what I think my Republican colleagues have in mind. So I think as these details of these deals become clearer to them, I think you probably will hear more from them.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
On the topic of unprecedented, because you mentioned that word, it is unprecedented that some Republicans are saying they want to go nuclear on changing the Senate rules, but others I talked to want to do this in a bipartisan manner. Phyllis, for example, mentioned working with Democrats. Are you supportive of doing that?
We certainly want to work in a bipartisan manner. First, remember, we're staying here, not because of us, but because John Thune wants us to stay here. Second, we are exchanging paper and conversations to try and come up with a bipartisan agreement. Last one.
Yeah, one of the things that you guys are working on the bipartisan way so far is appropriations.
Yes.
You know, we had a very messy long-term CR in March. You took a lot of heat by deciding a shutdown would have been worse for Democrats than what you ended up signing on to allowing. You're going to have a similar fight here in a couple of months. Do you still have that same view that a shutdown
Look,
would
the
work?
ideal way to solve this is Democrats and Republicans working together in a bipartisan way to come up with appropriation bills. And we're making some progress on that. Senator Murray and Senator Collins are working together, and that's the way we ought to go. We hope Republicans will join us that way. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, you guys, watch 232. It's like the Canadians think it's just impossible.
Did you see that Treasury Secretary Bessent did suggest that they might plan on 50% aluminum for 20 years?
Was that today?
Yeah, it was